Joe Biden may be the national poster boy for poor governance, but a more particular case study is unfolding in New York City.
Keep your promise. Keep your promise.
Most people believe that the biggest issue in New York the past year was the influx of illegal migrants. Not even close. It was congestion pricing. Until this.
I have come to the difficult decision that implementing the planned congestion pricing system risks too many unintended consequences for New Yorkers at this time.
The word gridlock was invented for New York City. In the borough of Manhattan, most of the streets are laid out in a perpendicular grid, and much of the time it's choked with traffic moving slowly or not at all.
For New Yorkers, mass transit is like air and water. We need it to survive.
Our subject, though, is not New York's terrible traffic. Our subject is money. Money is the lifeblood of the public sector, and in many jurisdictions governed by the Democratic Party, they are finally running out of it.
We're looking at a summer, fall, winter, and spring of hell.
New York's Metropolitan Transit Authority says it needs some $15 billion each year to repair the city's deteriorating subway and public transportation system. It came up with the idea of charging cars or trucks between $15 and $36 any time they entered Manhattan below 60th Street. Congestion pricing.
Now, it was enacted 5 years ago to achieve two essential goals: reduce traffic and emissions in New York City and provide a funding stream for much-needed capital investments in public transit.
On June 5th, the governor pulled the plug.
I have directed the MTA to indefinitely pause the program.
So where is the MTA going to come up with the $15 billion a year it says it needs to rebuild the city's public transportation system?
We have set aside funding to backstop the MTA capital plan and are currently exploring other funding sources.
In other words, there's no plan B for producing the $15 billion that, for instance, would repair subway stations where water pours through ceilings, walls, and down steps during heavy rains.
As part of this reordering, we have to prioritize the state of good repair work that assures the safety of our transit system. This is the basic stuff to make sure that the system doesn't fall apart. We call that state of good repair work.
After 60 years of commitments to social spending and expensive public union contracts, democratic cities like New York have reached the limit of being able to demand more taxes from their citizens.
In this moment of financial stress, high inflation, and already the high cost of living for so many New Yorkers, my focus must be on putting more money back in people's pockets.
In essence, the defeat of congestion pricing was a tax revolt.
Reversing course is going to make more people lose faith in Democrats. It's like, are you telling us what you actually want to do, or are you trying to cater for more votes?
Congratulations.
In the 1980s, some members of the Journal's editorial page had lunch annually with New York City's Mayor Ed Koch, who was always entertaining. But Koch also delivered a warning. The ever-rising cost of paying for Democratic programs, such as Medicaid, which started during Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, were killing the city's finances.
Listen, I grew up in New York in the 1970s when the transit system was in the toilet. We got where we are today by taking on real problems.
Blue cities have assumed they can get away with social welfare commitments and outsized spending on union contracts because ultimately the federal government will bail them out when their infrastructure emergencies arrive, as now with the MTA.
We need to be honest. Traffic is only getting worse. Sam Schwartz told me last week that traffic is actually measurably slower than it has ever been in his entire career. Sam Schwartz, Gridlock Sam, the expert on our traffic in New York City, notes that it is slower than any time since he began tracking it in the 1970s.
This is last-minute governance, and it has turned into a formula for steadily deteriorating city services.
We know congestion pricing generates the revenue that we need for our buses and trains.
Some argue that the MTA's congestion pricing plan was a rational solution to addressing the long-term capital needs of the city's transportation system. Nevertheless, it was in fact a new tax.
Hard-working New Yorkers are getting hammered on costs, and they and the economic vitality of our city must be protected.
Governor Hochul may have suspended the plan out of political self-interest, But her fellow Democrats elsewhere should recognize that a significant tax rebellion just happened in the overripe Big Apple.
The MTA put out a statement Friday night, just as a quick follow-up, saying that projects are already going to be deprioritized, including electric buses, certain key ADA projects. Today, the governor said all the projects are going forward. It's just a question of identifying a different means of funding. Those two things can't both be true. They're either deprioritized or going forward.
Listen, Andrew, I don't know exactly what she said, but the point that you made at the end is the right one, which is we need the funding in order to move forward.